where did gas works come from? I was big into these old dragsters from the mid to early 60s and even into the late 60s. They were called gassers. And what they were is they were modified wheelbase cars that they used to drag race. And they were modified wheelbase because back in the day, tire technology was not what it is today. It was nowhere near close. So if you're trying to get a car to go down the quarter mile as fast as you can, because the tires weren't as sticky back then, you had to modify the suspension on it in ways that would take and shift all of the weight. Those are freaking airplanes in there. The weird shit you see. It would take and shift all the weight to the back of the car when you accelerated off the starting line at a drag race. So I won't go into too much detail, but what they did back in the day is they would put whatever engine, you know, like a Buick Nailhead or a small block Chevy or a Ford or something like that in these cars. And what they would do is they would raise the suspension in the front. Most of the time they would have a straight axle out of like a Ford Econoline van or a Dodge van or something like that, and they'd put leaf springs underneath it, and it would lift the front end of this car up. And they would also, where the heck am I at? I don't know. They would also shove the engine back into the firewall of the car so as to bring the weight back even farther. And then they would put these slicks, you know, on the back of the car to try to shift all the weight to the back of the car to get more traction, more weight over the rear tires as possible, just to make it launch better. So that's what I wanted to build, you know, kind of as a product for my business, Gasworks Garage. I had started but never finished 2 gassers. Both of them were early Ford Falcons, and because of life getting in the way of having fun, I was never able to finish either one of those cars. But I had managed to, you know, redo the front suspension, which is the hard part in building a gasser, and that's about as far as I got. Never actually had one running. As a matter of fact, my first car that I ever owned was a 1962, I believe it was, a Ford Falcon that was built by a famous drag racer. Some of you that might know drag racing history, there used to be a man named Bob Glidden, and he used to race Ford. He raced factory Ford cars. They were not factory, obviously, they're modified for drag racing, but he used to race cars for Ford. And his mechanic had built this car that was my first car way back in the day. So it was a 1962 Ford Falcon. It had a straight axle in it and a tilt forward fiberglass front end. It had a GM 15 bolt rear end with a 5-point roll cage and Corvette disc brakes at all 4 corners. That was my first car, but it didn't have an engine in it, so I was never able to drive it. You know, I was young, 15, 16 years old, and I had dreams of getting this thing back on the road, but it just never came to pass. But I've always had a love for that style of cars, and if I could build one, if I had the space to build one now, I would absolutely do it. But here's the thing. Gasworks is kind of, in my mind anyways, turned into something just a little bit different than my original concept. In that, to me, out here riding motorcycles and messing with cars and just having fun with things with internal combustion engines, Gasworks to me means more like therapy. You know, it works. Gas, engines, therapy, it works. It's good therapy. So that's kind of what it means to me anymore. But so now here I am, many years later. I don't have a Gasworks Garage business, but I have a Gasworks YouTube channel, and this is basically what I can do. You know, this is what I have the time to do and what I can kind of pour my attention into and stuff. And just coming out here and riding and enjoying motorcycle life, and it's what I can do. The reason why I stopped working on old cars is simply because the price of the old cars it's gotten way too high for a normal guy to afford to buy, sell, and trade those old things like I used to all the time. I mean, that's thanks to all the big auctions. You know, say for instance, you got a guy that had a 1967 Chevelle, and he didn't think it was worth all that much, maybe a couple grand, something like that. But he's sitting down and watching Barrett Jackson, and he sees a 1960 Chevelle go across the auction block for, you know, $70,000. Well, now that guy all of a sudden thinks that his 67 Chevelle is worth $70,000 when it's not. But it gets into people's minds, and they started to think that, well, I have this old car, it's no longer just junk. I mean, I could sell it for a lot of money. Well, unfortunately now you can, because that mindset's been stuck in everybody's head for so many years now. Back when I used to mess around with old cars, I could literally just drive down almost any street in any town and pick one up for almost next to nothing. I mean, I've owned Coronets, I've owned Fairlanes, I've owned Dodge Darts, I've owned Falcons, Mustangs, you name it. Just all kinds of cars. Never owned a Camaro or a Corvette or nothing like that, but just for instance, I had a 1968 Dodge Coronet. It was a two-door hardtop 383 big block car. It was an automatic. Had I can't remember what the transmission. Anyways, it was a 68 Coronet big block car, and I paid $400 for that thing, and that was probably in 1993. I don't know if there's anything special about it, but how much do you think that car's worth now? If it was just parked on the side of the road, I don't know, $10,000? I don't know. But that's the reason why I got out of working on old cars, is because you can't just go pick them up anymore. You know, people think that their junk is worth a lot of money when it really shouldn't be. But I guess it's kind of a good thing that they are worth money, because people are now actually paying attention to these old cars and actually preserving them. Whereas back in my day, I used to be able to go to junkyards. You know, I mean, we're talking back in the 90s. This isn't even all that long ago. Back in the 90s, 25, 28, 29 years ago, you could just go in a junkyard and have your pick and choose from all kinds of old car parts, because nobody cared about them back then. Only the hot rodders really cared about the old cars, and that's what I was. I was a hot rodder. Me and my brother and a couple friends, I mean, that's what we did. We liked working on cars, and that's just kind of been, you know, over the years, it's just been taken away from us slowly but surely, because we can't afford to play the rich retired guy's game anymore, and that's what it's turned into. So what was the next logical step as far as you know, what am I gonna do? I like playing with old cars and things, and I just can't afford to. Well, I still have one, and up until several, you know, just a few years ago, I used to still have a few coming in and out of my garage, but it just got too spendy. The last car that I had that was really super nice was a 67 Ford Fairlane, and that car was beautiful. You know, it popped up on Craigslist one day, and this guy wanted $5,000 for it, or he wanted some guns, traded in AR-15s for it, and that's what I did. At the time, I had a buttload of guns, and I drove them over to this guy's house, and they were all legal guns, registered or actually purchased by myself, brand new from stores, or built by myself out of parts that I had ordered. So they were all legit legal guns, none of that shady illegal shit. But anyways, I threw a bunch of guns in my van, and I drove over to this guy's house because I was determined to have that car, because my dad had one just like it when I was a kid. That was the first car I ever worked on, so I had to have it. But I drove over to this guy's house, and I opened the van door, and I was like, you know, if I would have done this in a parking lot somewhere, you know, people probably would have called the SWAT team on me. But anyways, I traded a bunch of guns for this car, and it was absolutely beautiful. But the thing is, I didn't like driving that car around because, well, it got hit at a gas station one time, and then every time I'd go park it somewhere, I'd come out and there was just people, you know, parked 6 inches away from it. People had no respect for that car. Excuse me. And it was getting damaged just by the fact of me driving it. And it was too nice for me to cut it up and modify it like I would have liked to, so I sold it. So now I have my 1970 Mustang Coupe, which has been in my family since probably 1981. And I hardly ever do anything with that car. I keep it running, I drive it around the block every now and then, but parts are very expensive for those old things. I mean, if you wanted to put a paint job on an old car now, you're probably talking $15,000, and who's really got that kind of money? Well, retired guys do. And so playing with old cars is just a retired guy's game anymore. So back to today, this is now Gasworks. You guys sitting there either on your phone or your tablet or in front of your computer or TV screen, and you're watching me out here riding around the countryside filling your ear holes full of my blah blah blah. But this is where we're at, right? I mean, I can't complain too much. I'm not going to complain. I'm riding a brand new Harley-Davidson, which I've put, a lot of money into even after I bought it. So I'm not complaining at all. So that is the answer to the question that absolutely nobody asked. Who the F is Gasworks Garage? Well, this is me. This is Gasworks. And now you know, as they say, quoting Paul Harvey, the rest of the story. If you've made it all the way to the end of this story, I want to especially thank you for sticking around long enough to hear my story. I really do appreciate it. So, from out here in Cowiche Country, Central Washington, everybody ride safe, have a good day, and I will talk at you later.